All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, very excited to be chatting with an individual competing at UFC 310, and that goes down on December the 7th. We've got Max Griffin stepping into the cage against Michael Chiesa, Shadle Park High School's pride, and just great having Michael on the show. How are you doing, man?
Doing good, man. How about yourself?
Yeah, no, doing good, man. Yeah, can't complain. Get to talk to high level fighters, so I'm having a good solid day.
There you go.
But this seems like a big one for you, man. I noticed you're going to be fighting on your birthday, so I mean, just figured I'd mention that from the top. That seems intriguing.
Yeah, it's very intriguing. I do well fighting in the winter. I like fighting in the winter months, November, December, January. I think a lot of that has to do with coaching wrestling and just wrestling growing up, and my body's just geared to like when it starts to get colder, I start to get that itch to compete. So it's going to be fun fighting on my birthday. I got a lot of friends and family coming out. Should be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, so much to talk about with this fight coming up, but I feel like I'd also be remiss if I didn't at least briefly, touch on the last one there, getting that Tony Ferguson victory, a fight that was, many years in the making. You were supposed to have like, I believe it was a fight night main event with him years ago, and that fight finally coming to fruition and taking that fight after a layoff of a bit over a year. So just all factors considered, what did that victory mean to you and what was the overall experience like there?
Well, for one, I love fighting in Abu Dhabi. I think a lot of people don't like the trip, don't like what comes with it. I love fighting out there. I love the culture. I love the people. I got really excited about fighting Tony, just because it was like the one I felt like got away from me. That would have been my first main event. Um, and the injury bug bit me and kind of put me out for a while. And I just never thought I'd get that fight back. And Tony's a guy I have a ton of respect for, Ultimate Fighter champ, former interim UFC champ. So it was an honor to share the octagon with him and kind of get to finish settle our unfinished business. But I was very happy with how the fight went. I surprised myself. I didn't think that I'd be able to put Tony away in the first. I do feel like even going back to when we were supposed to fight originally, I feel like I have a style that's a tougher matchup for Tony. I'm pretty sticky. He likes to spin and take chances. And if you spin and turn your back to me, I'm going to capitalize on that opportunity to get to your back. And it didn't really come down to that. I was able to shut him down and get the submission. And it was a good feeling, man. It was good to kind of check that box. And I'm excited that just got me back in the win column, I feel like I just kind of got my mojo back, I guess is the right thing to say.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just even going back to what you were saying before about the December competitions, like that was something I was even kind of noticing in doing my research on you and whatnot. Is there something to that, you think? I mean, you're a big sports psychology guy from what I can tell and very cerebral, obviously one of the better analysts in the game. Like, is there something to that certain level of I guess competitive familiarity, for lack of a better way to phrase it, like even if it's attached to like a certain time of year you're competing, like does it just make you feel more optimal, or is there even just something to it in general, I guess?
I think it's just like I said, just from the years growing up wrestling. Like it's just when it starts to get colder outside, you start gearing up for wrestling season I've been doing that as a competitor and as a coach almost my whole life. I started wrestling when I was 11, 36 years old. So for the last 25, 26 years, when the fall leaves start to fall, I start to really think about fighting and starting to get that itch. Um, so I just think my body's just geared towards competing around this time of year during these seasons. So I'm excited for it, man. I'm excited to compete on my birthday. Uh, and it's always fun. I love competing during wrestling season because it's like I'm in there coaching the kids. And it's like a lead by example type of situation where it's like, I got to put in the work and go out there and compete and not just show them how to train, but how to conduct yourself in a way um, that I would expect them to, whether you win or you lose. You got to go out there and show good sportsmanship. Something I've worked on throughout the course of my career. I know there's been times I've bolted out of the octagon and not displayed the best sportsmanship when things don't go my way, but I've always been working on that, and I think the best way to avoid that is to just win. So, yeah, I just like fighting in the winter. I like fighting in the fall. It's just my season.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to say it kind of explains the whole dynamic of you being like in such close proximity to the Canadian border. You're like pseudo quasi Canadian anyway, so the winter
I
months are
really
getting you
am,
fired up.
honestly. I am. I'm very excited for. to reap the benefits of getting done with this fight because I plan on spending a lot of time in Canada this winter. Got my Icon pass ready. Sunshine Village and Lake Louise are calling my name. Probably spend some time at Red Mountain as well. I plan on spending a lot of time in Canada this winter.
Yeah, and I love seeing you just with like Battlefield Fight League. Like obviously you fought for them against Darcy James fairly early in your
Yeah.
career and got the victory, but great to see what you've been able to do in terms of like I guess just like analyst, broadcaster work, whatever parlance you want to use for that. Just great to kind of see your involvement in that. It must be cool for you, I would think.
Dude, I got to give a big shout out to Jay Golshani, man. He's a guy that's given me the opportunity to compete as a fighter, given me opportunities to be a broadcaster for him. And I just love the way that they conduct business within that promotion. I love how they have like their core group of guys, and it's nice to get to know these fighters. Like they're consistently using a lot of the same guys. And they're all good. I love their ranking systems. I love the way that they conduct business. It's very professional. They do a very good job. And it's nice that every time I work a BFL show, I'm usually in Vancouver, which I love Vancouver. I love Van City. Um, so it's just a blessing, man. I got to give a big shout out to my guy Jay Golshani for giving me the opportunities that he has throughout the course of my career. And I like I like being a staple to that promotion. They've always taken very good care of me.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. I feel like I always see you in those like different shout out posts. Like they had one kind of recently with like the UFC Edmonton card touting, Jamie Horth fighting and Kyle Machado, Series City. I feel like you're always in the cut for those kind of social media posts for them too. So yeah, definitely
Yeah.
love to see that. And I guess in the context of the broadcasting work, it's just cool to see what you've been able to do in that regard too, because you obviously do a lot of great desk work and stuff like that and analyzing from that vantage point, but was cool to see you do the Road to UFC event a bit ago there in the summer. That must have been a feather in the cap, or at the very least something that like informs a lot of momentum going forward and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's just the prequel of what I feel like is to come for me. I feel like in due time, I'm gonna be calling UFC fights octagon-side. It's all about being patient and just, every rep that I get working for Jay at BFL and the times I get to the few times I get to work for LFA, I take advantage of those opportunities to get quality reps and just better myself as a broadcaster. I feel like I polished myself up pretty well as an analyst, and I got to thank my boss Zach Candido for giving me the direction and the feedback that I need to be the best I can possibly be when I'm on the other side of the camera and I'm on the sticks. So, being a competitor is my primary focus, but I'm definitely, when I get outside of training camp, I really like to focus on my broadcasting work. I just feel like that's what's in my future. It's just a matter of time. It's just doing the best I can and being the best I can be when I'm on the sticks. And I feel like the right opportunities are going to present themselves, just judging by my body of work.
Yeah, well said, man. And to the point of fighting being the defined immediate focus, like something I find interesting about this fight here. Like, I mean, it's an exciting fight between two well-established guys who have those, proven action intensive styles, but just the way you guys kind of play off each other in a sense seems interesting. Like I've seen some interviews with you where you're talking about, and well, it's a lot of like your teammates too, like touting your striking ability and like, oh, when are you going to show that off? And you were speaking to James Lynch and you were like, this could be the kind of opponent where the striking game of mine comes to the forefront more. But then I also saw an interview with Griffin where it was almost like in a way he was welcoming this opportunity to perhaps show how underrated his grappling is. So just the
Yeah,
machinations of this matchup are really fascinating in that sense.
that's the beauty in the sport is you're just trying to throw your opponent off. There's so many different ways you can approach a fight. And like I said, I believe Max Griffin is a lot more well-rounded than people give him credit for. You go look at his fights, like the way he fought Condit, kick heavy attack on the legs. When he fought Tim Means, did a good job countering. When he fought Zaleem, really had a grappling heavy approach. So you just don't know what to expect from Max Griffin. But I know a lot of my teammates are always chomping at the bit, like, when are you going to put the wrestling down and just strike with these guys? Because they see what I do in the gym. And obviously I train with a lot of high level guys, but if plan A's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stick to plan A. But Max could be the guy to bring out that other side of me, and I'm excited for it. So that's what that's what's so intriguing for me for this matchup is like, I got a ton of respect for Max. I think he's a hell of a competitor. He's a great human being. He's a good ambassador for the sport. We've always gotten along when we see each other in passing. That's probably why it brings a smile to my face when I talk about it, because he's just a great guy. Him, and Fluffy trained years ago at the old 10th Planet in Las Vegas. So there's definitely a lot of mutual respect between him and I. And sometimes I feel like that mutual respect and that camaraderie, um, it makes it fun to lay it on the line with someone like that. So I'm excited to get out there and compete with Max Griffin, get out there and scrap. And, uh, it's just going to be a 15-minute window or less where we got to go out there and fight each other. And then before that and after that, it'll just be back to business as usual.
Well, I mean, you'll be giving him the Chiesa curse, so maybe not after the fact, I guess, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the Chiesa curse is a real thing. I'm the one that discovered that too. I was working the desk. I think it was when Luque fought Bilal, because I
Yeah.
believe that was his next fight after he fought me. And I was like, man, I'm kind of jinxing these guys. They get the best of me and things don't bid well for them thereafter. But I'm not trying to keep fueling the Chiesa curse on December 7th. I'm trying to go out there and get the win myself and not pass that obligation on to the next guy that's got to fight Max.
Yeah, no, just interesting. Funny that you're the one that, noticed that on the desk and everything like that. But a former opponent of Max Griffin, someone that you have a pseudo history with as well, Colby Covington. It seems kind of
Uh,
interesting his situation just with that
yeah.
Joaquin Buckley fight being announced. It kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm just putting my opinion out there, but I felt like it kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. Like, not saying it's a matchup that's not deserved per se, but just speaking more to Covington kind of not being as active. Like, it seems like you see Buckley getting the victory in that one. Like, would a future Covington fight still hold a certain level of interest to you? Like you were talking about the Ferguson fight earlier is almost like a one that got away. Like, in as far as there was like a formal booking setup previously that didn't happen. Like, is this Colby fight one that you would ideally want to have happen and determine that, best welterweight in the Pacific Northwest at some point, regardless of how he comes out of his next fight, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't feel like it's the one that got away from me in the same sense like the Ferguson fight did. Like the Ferguson fight, like we were pretty close to getting to the fight. I think I was about 3 weeks out when I sustained a back injury, but the Colby fight won't feel like the one that got away from me. It's just a fight I've always wanted. Like you said, I want to settle who's the best welterweight in the Pacific Northwest, and that's between him and I. But for Buckley, man, everyone's talking about Shavkat and Ian Gary, and I'm over here like, dude, I think Buckley's like that. He to me is the dark horse for is the title contender. I think he's going to do some nasty things to Colby Covington. I think it's going to be really hard for Colby to implement that game plan that he's so well known for, that pressure, the grappling heavy pressure. Buckley's short in stature, which makes it a lot harder to get to his legs, and he's got big power and he's very hungry. Like, and I think that's the biggest X factor in this fight with Colby is hunger. Like, you can tell that Buckley is very hungry to get to the top of the heap and fight these guys. So I'm happy that he's getting his opportunity, man. I think Buckley's an incredible fighter, and I'll enjoy watching him beat up Colby for sure.
Yeah, just such an interesting fight. I feel like it's just a great time for the division. I mean, I feel like I could probably always say that about welterweight, actually. I feel like it's always one of the more
Yeah.
deep kind of weight categories for sure. And I guess I'd be curious to get your fight or your thoughts rather on another individual you've crossed paths with, Vicente Luque, like just even in the
Yeah.
sense of that Nick Diaz fight falling out because, I mean, well, he's on this card as well, UFC 310, but fighting Themba Gorimbo right now. Like, what are your thoughts on, I guess, just even that fight, but also the situation with Nick Diaz pulling out. Like, do you see Nick Diaz getting into the cage at some point in 2025 and all that?
Hard, man. It's hard to say when he's been scheduled to fight two different times. Oh, hey, puppy. Oh,
You want to ask a
who's that?
question?
Yeah, what
That's
do you
my buddy.
got?
That's my buddy Stu.
Oh, what up, Stu?
Oh, I heard
uh,
you.
for Nick, it's just hard when you've seen him withdraw from this fight twice. It's hard to say like if he's gonna come back. I mean, like time is not on his side. And I know that like he was really clamoring to like fight the top guys when he was wanting to make his comeback when he was scheduled to fight Vicente the first time. And for him to have this level of inactivity and get a chance to fight a guy like Vicente and have it not come to fruition twice, I just have a hard time believing it's going to happen again. And it's got to be hard being in Vicente's position where it's like you've been booked for this fight twice. It fell through the first time. Now you're having to totally pivot to a completely different fighter. It can be hard to prepare for a guy like Nick Diaz because he's got a certain style that's very specific. Um, and so now you get this totally different opponent, Themba Gorimbo, who's could probably implement a lot more wrestling than Nick would have. So Vicente's got to, he's got to make a big pivot in his training camp, but he's down at Kill Cliff FC. He's got great coaches. I'm sure they're going to make the proper adjustments and he'll be prepared to fight. But for Nick, it's like as much as I'd like to see him back in the octagon, um, you know, time is not on his side. He's against the clock at this point. So I just don't know if I just don't know if we'll see him fight next year. I mean, if he doesn't fight next year, I don't see him fighting ever again.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like a, I don't know, crossroads moment in that sense. Like it seems like it's either going to happen next year or like not at all. But yeah, I mean, just interesting to see. Is that a fight that you would like to, I mean, obviously not overlooking this fight, but entertaining, a strong 2025 campaign or just general goals you want to actualize into reality as you continue to compete? Like, would a Luque rematch hold a great deal of interest for you? Just because I'd seen some interviews where you felt like that was more of a fight where you ended up, beating yourself in a sense, like not like you were trying to take away from his
Yeah.
win per se, but just a chance to do it again might be like more like a closure minded kind of thing, or at the very least, another opportunity to have a better representation of yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like I'm not saying if I would have been there mentally on fight night, I would have won. I feel like I just could have competed better. Um, it doesn't keep me up at night. I don't dwell too much on my losses. I don't like to dwell on the past, but I mean, if the opportunity presented itself to, any fighter that gets bested by somebody that you always want to, you're always going to welcome that rematch with that person. Um, but it's not something that I dwell on. And Vicente, what a great guy he is. I mean, he is for as violent as he is, he's so nice. He's just a genuinely good guy. So, if the opportunity presented itself, yeah, I would jump on it. But like I said, I don't dwell in the past. I don't look ahead. I just really focus on being present, being in the present moment, focusing on the task at hand. My vision. I got the blinders up. I'm just focused on Max Griffin in December 7th.
Yeah, and you do strike me as a guy that's very much, I would say, like, I guess appreciative of things that have happened in your past, but very like goal oriented and eyeing the future more so. I guess just in saying that, like this time next year, you've got your BJJ black belt, you've had a UFC fight in Seattle. Like, what other boxes are we checking off this time next year?
Just as a competitor, as a martial artist, like obviously big goal of mine is I want to get my black belt. I'm right there. I'm right on the cusp of it. And that would just be great. It's like getting your black belt's almost like getting like your college diploma. You know what I mean? You can do a lot with that black belt in terms of like opening up a school and just having more credentials. Not saying that's what I want to do, but I just know what comes with becoming a black belt and the responsibilities that you're given. And I feel like I'm mature enough to take those responsibilities on. Um, Obviously fighting in Seattle would be great, but that kind of falls in that category of not looking ahead. The rumor is February 22nd. That's a relatively, actually not relatively, that's a very fast turnaround. That would be 11 weeks to the day. So it's one of those things where like, I'm not going to get hung up on it if I don't get my black belt next year. I'm not going to get hung up on it if I don't get a fight in Seattle. It's just good to set goals and work towards them. And it's not a failure if you don't make them happen within that certain time frame. It's just all about the things you do proactively to give yourself the best shot at making these goals become a reality in the time frame that you want them to. So um the black belt thing is one I can focus on, but the Seattle thing, it's kind of in the back of my mind. I think about it, but I'm not dwelling on it. And I think it'd be disrespectful to my opponent if I really think that I'm going to walk through him unscathed and be able to turn around 11 weeks later and get in another fight, especially when it's like if I go out and beat Max Griffin, um, 2 wins in a row, I'm not going to get a cupcake fight. There are no cupcake fights in the UFC. So it's like, you know, it's a goal, but like I said, it's just there's so many variables around it. And I'm not going to disrespect my opponent by overlooking him and just start planning ahead for a Seattle fight. But the goal is there. We're just not going to really put much stock into it until I get through with this fight.
Yeah, I get what you mean. There's like a few moving parts to the whole situation for sure, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for sure. But I do want to be mindful of the time. I noticed the minutes are kind of escaping me here, and I'm sure you got some other interviews to do and just general life obligations, etc. So figured I'd give you the floor, Michael, if you had maybe like a final parting thought or anything like that you wanted to add as we're kind of wrapping up here, man.
No, just big shout out to my teammates, Ashton Charlton, Brady Houston, Sam Cecilia, Austin Arnett. My coaches, Rick, James Dillon, Spokane, Washington. Yeah, I'm just excited to get out there and compete, put this state and the city on my back and try to represent Washington as best as I can. And make sure to tune into my fight on December 7th.
Yeah, it's going to be a great fight. I mean, UFC 310 looking like an awesome card overall, but this Max Griffin fight especially stood out for me on this, deep event and everything like that. So to that point, thanks so much for coming on the show and giving such great insights, man. I can see why you are getting all these gigs with the analyst work and many more to come for sure. But yeah, thanks so much for the time, man. Looking forward to peeping this fight when it goes down. But until then, you have a good rest of your day, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.